Okay, I'm gonna do another review. Same thing. I'm gonna play the Kahoot and then I'll switch screens and kind of explain the answers to things. So I'm going to start now. Where in the vasculature does exchange with the tissue occur? Does it occur in the artery? Does it occur in the vein? Does it occur in capillaries or in the arteriole? So if you guessed capillary or new capillary, then that is the correct answer. So remember when we go down to the arteries, those are just kind of transport to get to the capillaries. That's where the actual exchange of oxygen and nutrients and waste and carbon dioxide is occurring. The arterioles are leading into the capillary beds, the veins are draining the capillary beds, and the arteries are bringing blood down to the arterioles. What is the term when the blood vessel increases in diameter? Vasoconstriction, vasodilation, venodilation, vasoincrease. The answer here is vasodilation. So remember when we're increasing in diameter, we're making it larger, so we're dilating it. And when you have vasoconstriction, then you're talking about making the diameter smaller. So you're constricting it or making it smaller. And we only talk about vasodilation or vasoconstriction. So those are the two terms. Vasodilation, a bigger diameter, increase in it. Vasoconstriction, a smaller diameter and decrease in it. What is the innermost layer of the blood vessel called? Tunica externa, tunica intima, tunica media, or tunica middle? So this is the tunica intima, is the middle internal innermost layer. So you might hear it as tunica interna. It's another way we can hear it. So interna or intima is the inner layer. That's of endothelial cells. And then we have the tunica media, which is going to be the middle layer. And then the tunica externa is going to be the outer layer. So tunica intima is going to be endothelial cells. Tunica media, oftentimes, if you're in the artery, is smooth muscle to cause that vasoconstriction or vasodilation. Um, Tunica externa is going to be more kind of connective tissue, and also kind of the sizes and what's composed of it depends on whether it's an artery or vein. What type of capillaries have small holes? Sinusoids, fenestrated, or continuous? So these are fenestrated capillaries. So I'm gonna switch this. So remember when we're looking at a capillary, so a continuous capillary is just going to have no holes. Yes, there is space between the endothelial cells, so that's how exchange can occur, is either through the endothelial cells, going directly through them, or in between, because there is kind of, they're not tight junctions, there are spaces. But when we have fenestrated, it's more like Swiss cheese, kind of small Swiss cheese holes, that there are spaces in between. So it's a little leakier. It allows more things to go through. Um, the holes. Sinusoids have huge kind of holes in between them, so they're letting everything. Because remember, fenestrated, it's not proteins. We're not letting proteins leave. Sinusoids, proteins can leave. And those are in specific areas, specifically the liver is going to be first one where we're making those proteins, then they can leave. So continuous is going to be no holes. Fenestrated is going to be small holes. Sinusoids is large gaping holes. So next, true or false, arteries have internal valves. So this is false, if you remember. So this is going to be veins and lymphatic vessels. So remember, anything that's low pressure is going to have internal valves so that they can help as blood goes through, then they can kind of close and allow blood to go up, and then they can go the next step and then they can close. So the fact that they have internal valves helps move blood into the next section. Remember, they have smooth muscle that'll help at least a little bit. Movement of your muscles is going to be skeletal muscles is going to be a major portion of moving both veins and lymphatic vessels. And then the pumping of the artery next to it is going to help as well. So anything that the veins and the lymphatic vessels can use because they're low pressure to help blood go back, especially north against gravity towards the heart, is going to be what they need. So internal valves are going to be veins and lymphatic vessels, and they have similar flow patterns, at least how they transport either lymph or blood back to the heart. Vascular resistance increases as the blood vessel diameter decreases. So think about that, true or false? So this is going to be true. They're opposites. So vascular resistance goes up as blood vessel diameter decreases. So we're gonna look at this. This. All right. So again, you have a normal blood vessel, kind of normal diameter, blood's flowing through kind of normally, if you kind of even look at it this way. So blood's flowing through, it's fastest in the center, then it gets towards the edges and it goes a little slower just because it's hitting the edge more often. Then all of a sudden you decrease its diameter, so you make it smaller. So you vasoconstrict. Remember, that's going to be decreasing the diameter. Then you're going to have a little kind of in the area in the middle, but then you're going to have less space and more kind of hitting the wall. So there's going to be more resistance, more bumpiness, more issues with flow in this one versus the original this one. And then the opposite is true as if you make it bigger. So you have more room in the middle. So you can have multiple kind of layers that are going pretty easily. And then outer here is when they slow down and hit the edges and aren't flowing as fast. So this is going to be vasodilation, where resistance to flow decreases because you have more space. So you can get through. So vascular resistance here is going to be less, even though the diameter is bigger. Vasoconstriction, the diameter is smaller, but the peripheral resistance or the resistance is going to be higher. So again, remember the straw analogy that I have. So if you have a teeny tiny coffee straw and you're trying to get a milkshake into this straw, well, it's going to be a lot of effort that you're going to need to take to get to your milkshake. If you have one of these really massive straws that you're trying to drink your milkshake from, then it's going to be a lot easier and you'll be able to drink it faster and a lot less effort going behind drinking this with this straw in your milkshake versus this straw. The driving force of reabsorption is capillary hydrostatic pressure, interstitial pressure, blood pressure, or blood colloid osmotic pressure. Right. So that is blood colloid osmotic pressure. So we're going to look at this again. So again, if we're on the capillary side or the arterial side of the capillary, so arterial is over here, venule is over here. Remember the driving force of filtration is moving stuff out of the capillary, and that's going to be hydrostatic pressure, which is kind of the same or similar to blood pressure, or it's going to be determined by blood pressure. So hydrostatic pressure, the amount of pressure that's going against the walls of the capillary that's going to force fluid out of the capillary. So it's filtration. So remember osmosis. So we're going from low concentration out here to higher concentration out here as well. So things are going to want to move out. They're going to push against the wall and they're going to push themselves out. So now we're getting to the point where we're losing fluid and water and all of that stuff, oxygen, all of that. And we're keeping our proteins. Our proteins can't leave as long as it's continuous and fenestrated, only time in sinusoids. So your proteins can never leave, but water's been leaving them. So their solute concentration or osmotic concentration is higher here. So now we switched. We've gone from high concentration or low concentration of water to high concentration of fluid. So now with all of these solutes, all of these proteins, the fluid is going to want to go from high to low again. So it's going to push back against the capillary wall. So you're going to have a pull of these proteins of fluid coming back in. And that's reabsorption because you got rid of it again over here, but then you're taking it back. It's a circle reabsorption. So it goes out and then comes back in, at least some of it. So this is going to be where you have blood colloid. Colloid meaning the proteins, osmotic pressure. So colloid is going to be kind of all the other stuff that's in blood is going to be in higher concentration in here, but the fluid amount is low. So it's going to want to come back in and it's going to bring waste and carbon dioxide with it. So that's going to be the reabsorptive side. And then this is the filtration side. True or false? Central regulation of blood flow includes monitoring blood pressure with baroreceptors. So this is true. So remember kind of talking about what um, let me switch screens again. So remember we have baroreceptors, which are going to be the stretch receptors that are going to look at pressure. So again, if in the right atrium, in the carotid arteries, places in the brain, they're going to recognize increased stretch. So that is going to be synonymous with increased blood pressure. So if we have an increased blood pressure, a lot of times we'll vasodilate because that will decrease resistance to flow and that will decrease blood pressure again. But will also help with the changing of heart rate. So you'll decrease heart rate. So any way that you can kind of try to help with blood pressure to get it lowered back down. If there's not enough stretch where it's not pushing as much on the sides of wherever these baroreceptors are, then you're going to vasoconstrict to increase blood pressure because it's low. And you're going to increase your heart rate because you're trying to compensate for cardiac output and get kind of blood flow everywhere because blood pressure is low. You're not getting as much blood flow and oxygen to your tissues. So you're going to do everything you can to increase blood pressure, increase kind of resistance to increase blood flow. So you're going to increase your heart rate and do all of those compensations to try to increase your blood pressure again. So it's all based on baroreceptors that are in your body. Remember, chemoreceptors are going to calculate carbon dioxide, pH, those kind of important chemicals that are in your body and compensate that way. So baroreceptors are stretch, chemoreceptors are kind of all the other stuff, carbon dioxide, oxygen, and pH. True or false? The right lymphatic duct drains most of the body. So this is false. The thoracic duct is what drains most of the body. Remember, the right lymphatic duct is going to be the right arm and right side of the head, neck area. I'm going to the subclavian vein to drain back into circulation. Thoracic duct does everything else. So the thoracic duct does most of the body. True or false, there are more efferent vessels than afferent in a lymph node. So this is false. So again, remember the difference between afferent and efferent. So we're going to look at this again. So remember, efferent with E is going to be exits. So efferent are going to be exiting the hilum of the lymph node. Afferent are the ones that are coming in. So remember, we wanted to slow down flow to give enough time for our white blood cells to monitor what's coming through. So if you have a lot of entrances, but one exit for all of this, then it's going to slow down flow because there's only one exit. So you want more afferent with an A coming in, and you want less exits to slow down flow. Because think of it too, if you have a bunch of entrances to a building, but you only allow people to exit one place, well, there's going to be a lot of congestion. Or you can think of it traffic. If you have a 3-lane highway that all of a sudden goes down to a 1-lane highway, you have a 2-hour wait. So just think of it that way. So efferent, E is for exit, and then there's less exits than there's entrances. Back to, nope. That. White pulp in the spleen holds the white blood cells. True or false? This is true. Remember, white pulp is where white blood cells are. So that's the kind of lymphatic part of the spleen. Red pulp is where red blood cells are, and they're taken care of when they need to be destroyed because they're old or stored if needed. So white pulp, white blood cells, red pulp, red blood cells. The signs of inflammation are redness, pain, swelling, and cold. True or false? So this is false. I hope everyone kind of before they chose their answer read every part of it, because I've caught people before where they just read redness, pain, and they're like, yes, it's true, but it's not all of them because it's not cold. So again, make sure, kind of my point is to read the question carefully and slowly and make sure you understand it before you're answering it. There's no race. You have plenty of time to take the exam, so make sure you're just taking your time, taking a deep breath, and reading the entirety of the question. So the signs of inflammation are redness, pain, swelling, and heat. So warmth. So remember all of the signs of inflammation. You dilate your blood vessels, so you get redness. You get heat from dilating your blood vessels. Then they become leaky, so you get swelling because they're leaking out to the tissues. And then that swelling puts pressure on your nerve endings and causes the pain. True or false, interferons work by opsonization. This is false. Go to this screen again. So remember, opsonization is going to be what complement does it. So you have a bacteria cell for whatever reason, and opsonization is you kind of surround it with either antibodies or complement proteins and make it so that they can't do any more damage or cause any more issues. And it allows kind of a big target for our phagocytes, like our macrophages, to come in and eat them. So it's a big meal for macrophages. They can see it pretty easily, so then they can come in and eat it. So opsonization. Remember, interferons interfere with your neighbor. So interferons interfere with viral replication. So remember, if you have a cell that is has a bunch of viruses in it and it's infected, then it's going to release an interferon and it's going to go into a neighboring cell. And so then that neighboring cell can produce antiviral proteins. So then it can stop if that virus comes in and infects. Then it's just the one virus because it can't replicate. It can't make babies because that's what viruses want to do is just use the cell machinery to make babies. So you have the antiviral proteins and they can't make babies. So eventually you can kill this cell, get rid of all the viruses. You can kill this cell, but they haven't made babies so that they can't get to the next cell. So interferons are stopping the spread of viruses because of that process. There's nothing, you kill that cell with a virus in it, there's no babies to go to the next cell, to the neighboring cells. Even then, you can have interferons that they are prepared and they made antiviral proteins just in case, depending on where the viruses go. So it's just stopping the replication, and eventually you have time to kill those cells with either natural killer cells or your T lymphocytes, the cytotoxic T lymphocytes, so you can kill those. So interferons interfere with viral replication. Share. This one. True or false? Complement stimulates inflammation, among other things. So this is true. Complement stimulates inflammation. So it comes in and it stimulates the vascular dilation and the increased vascular permeability to cause the redness, the heat, the pain, and the swelling. Complement also is does opsonization, where it'll coat the bacteria or virus or whatever so that it can't cause any more damage. It also kills itself. So remember, it makes the membrane attack complexes and they can come in and kill bacterial cells or certain cells themselves by producing the membrane attack complex, pop a hole in the membrane and cause it to be destroyed. So complement does many things. Inflammation is one of them. True or false? Natural active immunity is when a person gets sick. This is true. So kind of going over this as well. So remember, natural active, think of it as you're naturally infected, so your immune system is naturally active. So for whatever reason, you get a bacteria, comes inside your body, and then your immune system needs to fight against it with as many either innate or humoral or cell mediated or all of them. It's all of them is going to come and fight. So it's going to be activated naturally because you get sick and you get infected. Remember, artificial um, active is going to be mainly vaccines. So we kind of make it so these bacteria are not as much of an issue. So we'll either kind of make it so that they can't infect you, but you still have the antigens on the surface so that your immune system can still come in and recognize and be activated. So this is artificial because you're not actually getting the illness. You're getting pieces of them or inactivated parts of it, but it still has a reaction of your immune system. So your immune system is still able to recognize it and be activated and make memory. So if you were to actually be naturally exposed to it, then you have memory of it and you can take care of it. And a lot of times before you even have symptoms of it. So your immune system can take care of it and you don't even know you have it because your immune system is ready for it and it's that fast. So natural active is going to be just getting it. Artificial active is going to be vaccination. And then we also have natural passive. So that is when your immune system is not activated, but you're given the antibodies, and that's going to be antibodies, maternal antibodies. So from breast milk or through the placenta, especially IgG antibody. The G one is going to go through the placenta and milk. And so this is going to go into newborns so that they have some sort of defense. Because remember, your immune system does have kind of all set up for a bunch of things that it could be exposed to, but it's never been exposed to them again. So it's always going to have that first response where it's slower, you feel the symptoms, and it can be more negative. So having antibodies already in a newborn can be protective. So getting it from maternal. And then we also have artificial passive, where we're giving the antibodies to people, usually by injection, that's going to take care of the infection. So again, like I said, we gave a lot of people when we had COVID, significant amounts of COVID. We still have it, but significant amounts of it. We give people antibodies against it, and the antibodies would surround the COVID virus and be able to help defend against it. So having that, the immune system's not activated, you're just giving the antibodies that can fight the virus because the antibodies, that's what they're meant to. They're supposed to fight against it, but you're not stimulating your B cells and your T cells and all of that. So it's different. B cells are involved in what type of immunity? Cell mediated, antibody mediated, innate, or passive? So antibody mediated or humoral antibody or immunity is going to be B cells. Cell mediated is T cells. Innate is going to be all of those non-specific cells. So cell mediated is T cells. Antibody mediated is B cells. So B cells, remember, clone themselves, become plasma cells, make antibodies. True or false? The specific immunity has memory. So this is true. Remember, that's going to be one of the major things that is important with immune systems is that they can remember, they learn. So you are exposed to something once and they remember it and learn it. So then they have a faster response and so on and so forth. They get it again. They can remember it quickly and again. So the more they can get exposed to it, the more they can remember and the faster they can react to it. The innate or non-specific immunity doesn't remember and it's non-specific, so it'll kill against anything. The specific or adaptive immunity fights against kind of specific pathogens, but it remembers them. True or false? Antigen presenting cells only have MHC2 receptors. So this is false. Remember, remember that we have macrophages, B cells, and dendritic cells. So these are your antigen presenting cells. They are nucleated cells. So they have MHC2 because they're presenting cells, and that's what have MHC2. And they have MHC1 because they're nucleated. Because remember, MHC1 is everything but red blood cells. So they're going to have both. They will be able to announce to cytotoxic T cells with their MHC1. Because remember, MHC1 is cytotoxic T cells. And they'll be able to tell MHC2, they'll be able to tell helper T cells that the helper T cells are again the party coordinators, so they need to coordinate all the party with humoral immunity and the cell-mediated immunity, and kind of organize the non-specific immunity, organize all of the edges or the arms of the immune system. So this is going to be where helper T cells come in, and they also show MHC1 where cytotoxic T cells come in. So the antigen presenting cells have both. If it was just a skin cell, it's going to have MHC1. If it's just a liver cell, same thing, just MHC1. True or false, IgA is should be IgA causes histamine release. So this is false. Make sure you know the classes of the antibodies. So IgA is going to be entrances, and so it's making sure that virus, bacteria, pathogens can't stick. Oop, no, stick. IgE is going to be the histamine release from your basophils and your mast cells. And remember, histamine is going to be inflammation. That's what it does. So when you take an antihistamine, you're against inflammation. And then you have IgD, which is going to be just B cell surface receptors. Then you have IgG, which is going to be your most numerous. It's going to be a small one, just the kind of Y shape. and it's going to be the one that kind of fights second, and it passes through the placenta. It's kind of just the Y, and it's the most abundant. Then you have IgM, which is going to be the first one released, and it's the largest. So IgG and IgM are usually the kind of the classic ones that you think of when they're fighting against infection in your bloodstream. IgD again is B cell receptors. E is histamine release, so a lot of times allergies, you'll see this. And then IgA is stopping from getting inside. True or false, T cells and natural killer cells kill cells differently. So this is false. Remember, T cells are specific. So cytotoxic T cells are going to kill cells, but they're going to be specific ones that they have their receptors. So they're going to use perforins to poke a hole into the cell membrane and then put granzymes in to cause cell death. Natural killer cells do the same thing. They're just non-specific. So natural killer cells will kill cancer cell, intracellular pathogens the same way, but they will kill anything that's seen as foreign or abnormal. T cells will find their specific match and kill the same way. True or false, cytotoxic T cells are activated by MHC2 receptors. So this is false. Remember, cytotoxic T cells are activated by MHC1, the ones that are on all nucleated cells, everything but red blood cells. Helper T cells are activated by MHC2 receptors. So helper T cells have to be presented with what they're kind of coordinating an attack against. So they need to know what they're fighting against so they can kind of coordinate all the immune system. Because again, without helper T cells, you have no immune system because they kind of communicate and coordinate everything. So without the party planners, there's no party. Cytotoxic T cells will kill anything that they see, so they need to fight against all different types of cells, not just antigen presenting cells where MHC2 is. True or false, second exposure to pathogen increases speed and strength of immune response. So this is true. Remember, you have kind of the exposure to the first exposure, kind of showed you that graph. So you have the first exposure, and you have kind of time in weeks down here. So you kind of have kind of the small response and delayed response where it takes a while. And then you have second exposure where you kind of have the response, but then IgG is going to go for longer. So there's a longer, more intense response. So there's more antibodies produced and it's faster. So second response is faster, quicker, stronger. You learned. So the immune system learns. And first time you're reading something, you're kind of learning, just kind of trying to understand it. Second time, then you can kind of talk about it faster and more, and then kind of continue. So they learn and gets faster. True or false, without the helper T cells, the immune system cannot function. So this is true. If you don't have helper T cells, then the immune system can't coordinate, can't communicate with each other, so there is no immune function. So again, that's why HIV attacks the um, human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, attacks helper T cells, and that's what causes the immunodeficiency because the more helper T cells you attack, the less that your immune system can work and fight against infections. So that's all of the review that I have. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, just contact me. If not, good luck.